So welcome to week 11. This week's lab is all about writing functions. Now at first that might seem a bit scary, but it really is not a lot more than what you've been doing in this course already. Essentially we've already fleshed out the content of the function. All we need to learn in this lab today is just how to what the appropriate wrapper is for a function to actually define it as a function rather than a separate piece of code. Let me show you what I mean. So first of all, we may, for example, be interested in, let's take a really trivial example, multiplying a number by 2 or doubling a number. So my code for that might be, say I call my number x, and let's just put in a value for now. Let's put x is 3, and then I want to find out what 2 times that number is. So if I do that, I can just run that code, and then that gives me 2 times the number 6. So that seems simple enough. Now all I need to do to make that into a function is, so here x is the thing that I want doubled. So x is going to be an input to my function, and the output is going to be the result of doubling the number. So first of all, I need to think of a name for my function. It can be anything, but let's call it double, or let's call it double it. Then again, we use the assignment operator as we do for assigning variables to say assign to this name the function, and here we use the function command to tell R that what's coming next is a function. And in the brackets of the command, basically the function command is unique in that essentially it has, if you like, it has 2 sets of brackets. It has the first set of brackets, which are where the inputs go, and the second set of curly brackets, which enclose basically what the function does. So all our function does here is takes x and multiplies it by 2. Now x is an input, so we need to specify it inside the round brackets there. And just to be clear, the output from the function is enclosed within the command return. So this is a very simple function. This is just a one-line function. So what does this function do? It's a function called double it. It takes an input x and it returns 2 times x. So in fact, to use that function, all we need to do is say double it 3. So we need to, if we just tell R that that's our function, and then we can run the command double it 3 and it returns 6. And of course the advantage now is that I can obviously just supply any number to my function and it immediately doubles it. Anything we like will do the job there. Functions can also have multiple arguments, so rather than say double it, let's say we wanted to create a function that was called multiply it, and instead of just taking 1 argument, it takes 2 arguments, and what actually happens is those 2 arguments get multiplied together. So now my new function called multiply it has 2 inputs, x and y, and if I do that, so I put in my multiply it function, multiply it 2, 3 gives me the answer 6. Now something to be careful of here, R interprets the inputs here, x, y. It interprets the inputs you supply in that same order, x, y. To be clear, you can do this, so you can tell it explicitly that x has the value 2 and y has the value 3. Okay, and an interesting thing we can also do is, as long as we're specific about which argument's which, we can reverse the order, which actually, of course, makes no difference here to my multiply function. Finally, we can also allow things to have default arguments. So before I have my function double it, I've generalized it to the function multiply it, but let's say that my default thing that I want to do is to double things. So if in the function argument here I put an equal sign followed by something, then that says the default value of y is 2, which means if I don't specify the value of y, it will assume that y is 2. So if we just rerun that function, multiply it, x equals 3, still works. What wouldn't work is if we didn't specify y. Here we go. Now if I try to run this function, I get an error, y is missing, and that's because y has no default value and I haven't specified what the value of y should be. So if I say y equals 2, run that, that'll work. Some other ways I can get problems: if I specify y, now x is missing because x has no default value. Of course we can break functions by sending them nonsense. So here I'm going to try and multiply hello by 2, and straight away R doesn't know what we mean. Non-numeric argument to binary operator. In other words, the binary operator here is the multiplication, and it doesn't know how to multiply hello. So one thing that we'll move on to later is how to trap incorrect inputs into our functions. But for now, this is very basic, but that's all we need to learn for this week. So it's not that complicated. We have our code that we already know how to produce, and we're just wrapping it in this function argument, and that allows us to separately call the function. One other nice thing that we can often do is supply a vector to my multiply it function, and it multiplies each element of the vector one after another. So functions are a useful tool. Next week we'll move on to some more further applications of functions. But that's it for this week.